Hi everybody, my name is Lynn Hayes. Welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about the astrology for the week from November 2nd through the 9th, 2020. So this is the week of the election. I'm not going to talk for a long time about that. I will put a link to the video that I did about the election in the description box, just in case you're interested and want to catch up with that. This is certainly an intense time for people who live in the United States. We're barreling towards the US Pluto return. There's signs of it everywhere. This is a very intense election with a lot of conflict. And I think it's comforting when we can see the signs of conflict that we're seeing in the world are reflected in the planets. For me, it just gives me a sense that there's some sort of meaning. It's not just a bunch of random events. There is some sort of meaning. There's some patterns at work. There's a cycle that's flowing. And I hope that that will give us all a sense of comfort no matter what side you're on. People are not going to be happy with the result of the election. It's probably going to be fairly stressful. Astrologically, we've had the planet Saturn, the planet of tests and challenges, going back and forth over Pluto in the chart of the United States. Pluto is in the second house of values and money and resources in the chart of the US. We sometimes say that the placement of Pluto shows where we meet our own undoing, and the obsession with money in the United States, we could say, has definitely created a lot of challenges in this country. The triple conjunction with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter have all been activating the second house in the United States. There's been this huge increase in the stock market. So many wealthy people are getting wealthier, and the difference between the wealthy and the not so wealthy is widening. That gap continues to widen. And I feel a lot of this is because of this concentration of planetary energy in the second house of the US. This isn't going to be over anytime soon. In fact, after the election around November 27th, Saturn is going to make its final pass over Pluto in the US chart. And it will be followed by Jupiter shortly after on December 7th, with Jupiter and Saturn transiting over the US Pluto. And then in 2023, we're going to have Pluto in the sky returning to its place in the chart. So there's definitely this dredging up of issues in the United States around wealth, around power, about who has it, about who doesn't have it. And that certainly is symbolic in this election. So no matter who wins, I just want to leave you with this thought that there is a rhythm and a flow to the planetary cycles, and that when there is a system in a person, physically, in their body, or in a country, in its government, that is not working, when a planetary cycle comes along, it often reveals the underlying issue so that we have to face it and we have to deal with it. So I think that's all I'm going to say about the election this week. Next week, I'll probably have some sort of a recap. Also this week, we have Mercury, which has been retrograde. It was in Scorpio. It retrograded back into Libra, and Mercury will turn direct on November 3rd at 12:49 p.m. Eastern Time. Please adjust for your own locality. The change of direction on Election Day, I think, is very interesting. I think it could show that later in the day on Election Day, there might be some sort of change, some sort of shift. The day may end up differently than it began. Mercury is in Libra, as I said, and it's at 26 degrees Libra, which is almost exactly square to Saturn. So there is this sense of a need for adjustment, a challenge, some sort of test, some sort of blocking of information. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not going to attempt to make any kinds of predictions. We'll just see what happens. It looks like there's likely to be some pretty interesting, surprising events. The square between Mercury and Saturn, which normally would last only a day or two, is going to last for much of the week, because Mercury, which has slowed down its movement in preparation for its turn direct, is almost at a standstill. It's going to be within a degree or two all week in this challenging square to Saturn. So I suspect this information challenge will last throughout the week. It's not like, oh, there's an election, we have the votes counted, we know who the winner is, and that's the end, we just move on. There's so many planetary factors right now on top of everything else that's going in the world. So I think we're likely to have some delays, which is another thing that we think of when we're talking about Saturn. And when Saturn is square Mercury, the planet of communication, those delays have to do with communication, information processing. All of these things will be affected. I want to talk for just a minute about the upcoming final conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto. This is the third phase of this triple conjunction, and we have Jupiter, the planet of ideology, the planet of abundance and opportunity, but also the planet that can be very self-righteous, that can think it knows everything. So when we're under the influence of Jupiter, often we have that experience where we think we know everything, nobody can really tell us anything. So we've had the combination of Jupiter to Pluto, and there's been a lot of ideological conflict. Pluto, of course, being the planet that dredges up all of the issues and all of the challenges and reveals all of the muck and the dirt for us to see so that we have to clean it up. So the final phase of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is actually on November 12th, but because the two planets are both moving very slowly, we're going to be in range of that conjunction within 2 degrees for the next couple of weeks. So just watch for this. It's going to be difficult to avoid a lot of conflict under this influence. We have seen the presence of the asteroid Pallas Athena that's been traveling along with Jupiter for months now, and I'm very hopeful that the wisdom of the goddess of higher intelligence will help to shine a brilliant light of guidance as we go through these next few weeks. The last thing I'd like to talk about before we talk about the week ahead is the fact that Mars, which has been retrograde since September 9th, will be turning direct on November 13th. But because the motion of Mars has slowed down as it prepares to turn direct, Mars is moving very slowly. Fortunately, it's out of range of all the other Capricorn planets, which for about 6 weeks to 2 months, Mars was just triggering Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn. And there was a lot of violence and a lot of anger and rage everywhere. It was difficult to drive here where I live. But Mars has moved out of range of those planets, and it is going to turn direct on November 13th and start to make its way back. However, because its motion is direct, it will be picking up speed. By the time it gets to the alignment with the Capricorn planets, it'll be moving fast enough that I don't expect it to cause any real problems. That's going to be in effect towards the end of November and early December. But with Mars turning direct, we are going to be out of the summer of retrogrades. This intense pause that we've been under with so many planets retrograde will be lifted. And even under the COVID situation, which is certainly still creating a lot of problems, and I expect it will for quite some time, there hopefully will be some more forward movement. In our personal lives, it's been very difficult to really get anything moving because of this heavy retrograde influence. But hopefully once we have more planets moving direct, it will be easier to put your plans and your goals into motion. So now let's talk about the week ahead. On Monday, November 2nd at about 5 a.m., the moon is going to move from Taurus into Gemini. That's a nice shift where we go from this sort of placid, calm peacefulness to Gemini, which is more active, more interested. There is more of a focus on information transfer. We can feel more excited about learning and talking. There's more of a focus on communication, certainly. The moon will harmonize in a trine to Venus that day. Venus is in Libra. So when the moon and Venus are in a harmonious alignment, it's a wonderful day for relationships, anything emotional, creative. We feel like we're more in a flow. Both the moon and Venus will be in air signs, so there still is a sort of a little bit of a detachment and a sense of communication here with the moon and Venus highlighted. Then on November 3rd, we have the election. Let's hope that the conjunction of the goddess Pallas Athena, the goddess of higher wisdom, will guide the world to the correct result, whether it's the one you want or the one I want, the correct result that's for the highest good of everyone. Then at 12:49 p.m., Mercury will turn direct. Then on Wednesday, November 4th, the moon will move into Cancer at about 4:45 p.m. When the moon moves into Cancer, its own sign, emotions take prevalence. We may find ourselves feeling more connected in the heart, more guided from the heart, from our feelings, from our emotions, and more compassionate. Now, because there are so many planets in cardinal signs right now, we have Venus in Libra, we have Mars in Aries, we have Mercury back in Libra. These are all cardinal signs of action. We have Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all in Capricorn. Anytime the moon goes into one of the cardinal signs, it's triggering many different planets. I forgot to mention Chiron, which is also in Aries. When the moon moves into Cancer, it'll form a square to Chiron later in the evening on November 4th. Then on November 5th, the Cancer moon is going to square first Venus and then Mars. This can be somewhat problematic for relationships. It could be problematic for arguments and discussions. And I imagine in the post-election period, there could be a lot of discussion anyway. Everybody is much more connected to their feelings than we might typically be with the moon in Cancer. Even those of us who are not necessarily that emotional will be more emotional with the moon in Cancer. So when the moon squares Venus, but more importantly Mars, that trigger of Mars to our sensitive moons could be somewhat disruptive. And this is on November 5th. Then on Friday, November 6th, the moon, still in Cancer, moving towards the late degrees of Cancer, will start to oppose the three planets in Capricorn, which are Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. The sensitive moon enjoys very much being in any kind of aspect to Jupiter, even a challenging square or an opposition, because Jupiter is generally expansive and the moon really craves that sort of experience. But when the moon is opposite Saturn and Pluto, which it will be sort of at that same time, then we may find ourselves starting to shut down, to perhaps feel somewhat sad, somewhat depressed under the Saturn influence, somewhat intense under the influence of Pluto. So just watch for that. That's not a very good day to try to get into any kind of a difficult discussion or anything that could trigger challenging emotions, because people can't really get the perspective that they need in order to have a productive conversation at that time. But on Saturday, November 7th at about 2:18 a.m., the moon will leave Cancer for Leo. And remember, this is Eastern time. Please adjust for your own locality. When the moon moves from Cancer to Leo, there's naturally kind of a lift. The intense emotionality of Cancer takes us deep into the soul, where we feel more connected to ourselves. But when the moon moves into Leo, there's more of a desire to find joy and happiness, and let's see if we can find the positive. Let's see if we can find a way to really get the best out of whatever is happening right now. On Saturday afternoon, Eastern time, the moon in Leo will form a square to Uranus. Now, typically when Uranus is in a square to the moon, it can feel kind of disruptive. We can feel kind of uneasy. But because the moon is in Leo, where we're seeking joy, we are open to new experiences. We're open to feeling differently. So when the moon squares Uranus, it's going to trigger a desire for doing something new, something fresh. It'll bring some fresh new energy into your experience, which will be a positive thing. I think if you're expecting this to happen, it may be easier. If you're not expecting it, you may suddenly feel a disruption, especially if you have a lot of earth in your chart and you tend to be more kind of grounded, not like a lot of change. Then here comes Uranus, and there's kind of a big disruption that can throw you off. But this alignment has the potential to breathe a lot of fresh air into our experience this week, which I don't know about you, but for me, that sounds pretty positive. The other thing I want to say about Saturday, November 7th, is that the sun will be at 15 degrees Scorpio that day. Really, it's late in the day on Friday the 6th Eastern time, so check for your own locality. But this is the cross-quarter time where the veil is thin between the worlds, where people have celebrated the holiday Samhain. And it does tend to be a time of powerful energies. So it is a very good time if you are creating intention for your life, because now we're sort of at a crossroads with COVID and perhaps a change in circumstances. And at this time, 15 degrees Scorpio, it's a powerful time where our intentions can be magnified and they can be brought into reality. It's also the time of the waning square of the lunar cycle, which makes it a very good time to let go of things that are no longer working for you, to start to move through some situations from the past that you don't want to bring into your future, and just generally to bring some positive energy into your life. At the same time, the moon is forming a sextile aspect, which is a 60-degree aspect to Venus. So there's a lot of planetary harmony this day on Sunday, and it's just a wonderful day for pretty much any kind of positive energy that you might want to bring into your life. Then on Monday, November 9th, the moon is going to finish its cycle through Leo, and it will enter Virgo at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll have a new video by then, but when the moon is in Virgo, it's a good time to start to sort through the details of our life. Virgo is a wonderful time to map out all the situations that you're involved in, what's good, what's bad, how to organize things, how to create a strategy. This is a very good time to prepare for Mars turning direct by focusing on the things that are important. So when you're doing your Virgo organization, you'll know what you want to bring into the future and what you need to leave behind. That's a bit of a theme right now, I feel. There's been all this retrograde energy. We've been looking back. There are things that we can't take with us into the future. The world is changing. It's really forced us to focus on what is important in our life, what's really real for us. So I think that's a good place to end this video. I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.